the B12. Oh, I'm sorry. You got to go live.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to go live. Okay, take us live. Well, I think Deb said we're not quite yet.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll just let you know.
You good, Deb?
Yes, we are live now.
Okay. I'd like to call to order the Thursday, November 12th, 2020 North Virginia Transportation Authority meeting. I'm going to do a roll call just to see who's with us already, and I know that Mayor Woods is going to be late. So Mayor Parrish is here with me. I see Mr. McKay. I see Miss Wheeler. I see Miss Crystal. I see Mr. Wilson. Councilman Snyder. Did you see him?
Sure.
Mr. Snyder? Okay. I see Mayor Rischel. Mayor Meyer. I didn't see Mayor Meyer. Mayor Meyer, you there? I'm going to go for
He's there.
Yes, okay. I see Senator Boysko. I see, I don't see Delegate Watts. Delegate Watts. I see Delegate Watts. Okay. I see Delegate Rome. I see Mary, who's texting and looking very comfortable. I see Mr. Cole. Mr. Wood's going to be late. Miss Kerbel, I see her. And Miss Mitchell. So there we go. All right. Why am I hearing feedback? Okay. How about everybody mute, if you don't mind? Thank you. Perfect. Wonderful. Okay. First thing we're going to do is I need a motion, please, to conduct the meeting by electronic communication means via the resolution that is in you all's package. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved by I think that was Ms. Boysko that said that. Was that you, Ms. Boysko? Okay, and I got a second from whom?
Rome.
I got a second from Delegate Rome. Does anybody disagree with that? Seeing none, that motion will pass unanimously. With the exception of Mr. Wood, who is not on right now. I'm sorry? Did he come in?
No, Chair Randall, this is David Meyer from the city of Fairfax. I had difficulty logging on, but I'm here now.
Okay, thank you. So that motion will pass 1301 with Mr. Woods not on the call right at this moment. The next motion is if everyone looked over their October 8th minutes and see no issues, do I have a motion to approve? Motion to approve by Mr. Parrish.
McKay,
And
second.
Second by Chairman McKay. Any discussion on the minutes? All right. And does anyone disagree with approving the minutes? All right. Did you say you say Derek is on, Monica? Okay. Well, then that will pass 14-0 unanimously. So we're going to do the first presentation, which is the audit, and then from the audit, we're going to go straight to action item number 9, which is acceptance of the audit report. We'll do the action item attached to the presentation back to back, just to shorten the agenda a little bit. And so we will go straight to the presentation of the audit. Mr. Parrish, would you like to say anything or introduce anybody before we start that?
Well, let me just set it up since Mike Garber is going to be providing that presentation to us. It's good to have him with us tonight, and they worked hard on the audit, and you'll find that it's a very, very good result. Mike Garber.
Great. Thank you all very much. Appreciate having a few minutes here this evening. I don't believe you've had a chance maybe to see a hard copy of the financial statements yet. And so I'll just quickly go through some of the highlights, and we have met with the Finance Committee and gone through this. So I won't take up your time. I think somebody said the over-under tonight was 11 o'clock. I will do my best to keep you under. So on the opinion, the page that you see there in front of you is an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That is a clean opinion, and which is what you're looking for. And so we did not have any reason to modify any of the statements or anything of that nature. There's also opinion in the very back of those financial statements, and we're not going to do all this flipping back and forth here. That is on internal control and compliance. That opinion as well as a clean opinion. We did not have anything that came to our attention that we thought we needed to include there as any type of compliance or internal control finding. The financial statements themselves are very similar to what you've seen in years past. Again, with the different funds, the regional funds, and so on and so forth. And I will draw your attention when you do have a chance to see the financial statements. In the very back there, I think it's pages 80 and 81, there's a listing of all of the projects that you have approved, how those are being financed. And so as we look at our equity in our statements themselves, and I know I don't need to remind this group of this at all, but on those pages, it shows you where you have basically tied up the majority of your funds for your projects that you have going. And so that's always a good place, I think, good summary of everything that you have approved throughout this year as well as other years, how much has been spent on those projects and how much is remaining to be spent on those projects. As far as the audit itself, we did do this remotely as we have been doing everything, and working with management and the finance group. That audit went really, really well. I believe that it's been harder on the auditees than it has the auditor to try to do these remotely. We've probably asked for things and had to look at things electronically, schedule interviews over the phone and through Zoom and WebEx and things of that nature that we'd normally do face to face. So certainly appreciate everyone working with us there, answering those questions and things of that nature. We did not have any audit adjustments. We did not have any past adjustments. And we did not have any issues in internal control that we thought were necessary to put in a management letter either. So the audit went extremely well. We had no disagreements with management or anything of that nature as well. I believe for the most part, that is everything I wanted to go over. We did not adopt any new accounting or GASB standards this year, so there's nothing I need to draw your attention to there as far as changes in the financials. As GASB and FASB have done, because of COVID, they did extend the dates for implementation for a lot of the new standards. So there were some things that we would have been adopting, but due to COVID, those standards were extended. And so we will be adopting some new statements next year and the year after, but this year we did not have to do any. I believe that is, I wanted to go over with you all this evening in summary form. The financials were issued and dated back in the middle of October, but I'm not sure they have actually been released until this evening for the board to have a chance to look at them and approve them. But with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Any comments?
Mr. Parrish.
Okay, first of all, let me make sure that I'm operating my computer correctly. Can you all hear me? Okay, very good. Just a couple of thoughts, Chair Randall. First of all, I'm very proud of our staff. They've worked hard along with the auditors to accomplish this, and I'm going to read a couple of things just very quickly here in just a minute. But secondly, I'd like to thank Mayor Rischel from Manassas Park for her continued support of the Finance Committee. Mayor, thank you so much. I appreciate it very, very much. And I know that you stand solid with the MVTA and the Finance Committee. Thank you for that. I am, as Mike Garber indicated, I'm going to read just a little bit from the report to the Honorable Authority Board members. It's a report dated the 16th of October. Mike referenced that date. But just a couple of things, and just picking out pieces of sentences. We're not aware of any uncorrected misstatements. We encountered no disagreements with management. We're not aware of any consultations management had with other accountants. No significant issues arising out of the audit. We did not encounter any significant difficulties. That's a pretty sizable statement right there. So let me, in addition to thanking staff and Mayor Rischel, thank PB Mayers and in particular Mike Garber and his team for working so closely with us. Thank you for that. And I'd like to make a motion, Chair Randall. I move that the authority accept the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority financial and compliance audit reports for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020.
Second, Crystal.
Motion was made and seconded by Ms. Crystal. Discussion on the motion. Does anyone oppose the motion? That motion will pass 14-0. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Garber.
Thank you
Thank you,
all.
Mr. Parrish.
Thank you all very much.
Next, we have the I-495 next project briefing by Ms. Shaw. Is she on?
Chair Randall, this is Rob Terry. I'm the Chief Deputy Commissioner of VDOT, and I was going to start out, and then Susan Shaw will jump in and do most of the presentation.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, I'm joined tonight, as I mentioned, Susan Shaw is on. I know that Abby Lerner, our project manager for the 495 Next project, as well as Helen Cuervo, the Northern Virginia District Administrator for VDOT. In particular, I've gotten involved in this more recently. Secretary Valentine has asked that I personally get involved and attend meetings like this. We're with Fairfax County on Tuesday. Last night, we were with the Great Falls Citizens Association out there briefing on the project. The deadline for comments on this has been extended into early December. And that is really working in our advantage in that it's allowing us more opportunity to go out and present to more groups, more neighborhood associations, groups like this to make sure that everyone is well aware of exactly where the project is. And I think it's also another great opportunity for VDOT to partner with Northern Virginia to deliver another critical transportation infrastructure project that really is all about improving quality of life. I mean, you know, that's one of the most backed up areas in the Washington region is approaching the American Legion Bridge on the Beltway. And in this case, we have a private partner who is at this point proceeding forward to try to deliver that project. We'll see if we arrive at that point ultimately. But I would say that this is a project, we don't have all the detail on the exact value, but probably, you know, $500 million plus. And, you know, just to put things in perspective, you all are well aware of Smart Scale. You know, that's really like the entire priority funding that's available statewide is represented by what this project would deliver if in fact it did. So I think it is an opportunity that's certainly worthy of very strong consideration as we move forward. If you could go to the next slide, the slide that you see, that's going to be an overview of what Susan will go through. And we just wanted to make sure we covered all of the areas that we thought would be of concern to the NVTA. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Susan to do the presentation. We're happy to take any questions, obviously, as we go along or when we're done. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. And thank you to the authority for having us here tonight. So I'll just briefly cover our project overview, what our summary findings. We've been at this since 2018. So you'll hear our environmental and traffic findings, what we've been doing relative to public outreach, what concerns have been identified as we've done that, you know, work through that public outreach, talk a little bit about our partnership with Transurban and our coordination with Maryland, and then our next steps on the project. On the next slide, you'll see our project overview. It's basically extending the existing express lanes on the Capitol Beltway about 3 miles, just north of the Dulles Toll Road interchange to the George Washington Memorial Parkway in the vicinity of the American Legion Bridge. As we do that work, we're planning to replace existing bridges that span across the Beltway. We're also looking to add a bike trail along the Beltway, as well as improve pedestrian facilities on these bridges that cross the Beltway. Noise walls is, of course, a big part of our project, looking at noise impacts, replacing existing noise walls, as well as constructing new ones where they're needed. And then we also will be providing stormwater management as well as stream restoration along the corridor. So the goals of the project, as Rob mentioned, this was or is currently the most congested segment of our interstate system in the entire Washington metropolitan region. So we want to reduce congestion, provide additional travel choices for people moving through this corridor, improve reliability, and enhance safety. And so our studies did show, as you can see on the next slide, what are the project benefits? And this is after our traffic analysis and environmental study. We did find that the project does add new capacity. It does provide new travel choices. It decreases travel times during the peak periods. One of the areas that is of concern to the local area is reducing cut-through traffic on local roads. And as you know, now that everybody has GPS that's real time on their phones, in their cars, people are often directed to go on local roads because they're faster. And we're finding that in this corridor. On the right hand, what you see in this graphic is a screenshot of a Google map during an afternoon or evening peak period. Very typical, lots of red on the Beltway. If you're in Tysons at this time of the day and you want to head north, you're typically will be sent by your GPS onto local roads. And so we did find that it did reduce that cut through traffic. It helps to take cars off a local road. And then because we're extending the express lanes up to the GW Memorial Parkway, it makes that travel between that to the GW Memorial Parkway very seamless. It provides an opportunity for people to stay out of all of that mix of the general purpose lanes and be able to make those connections through the express lanes. So on the next slide is a very high level showing the high level results of our traffic analysis. Our study did show that we move more people in the corridor. And of course, our express lanes focus on using HOV3 and providing a means for transit travel in the corridor. Our study is separate from the work that's going on in Maryland, but we did coordinate with them. Maryland's project is also in the constrained long range plan. And of course, with Maryland's project, we see benefits of significant decreases in travel time in the corridor. Now, one of the things that we were asked, because there's a concern about will there be a gap in when our project is completed before Maryland's comes online. And as currently, between both states, as we envision that there's a potential for about a 3-year gap. And so we did do a sensitivity analysis to see how our project would perform in 2025 if Maryland did not come online by 2025. And so we still saw that there were benefits in the off-peak periods and certainly in the southbound direction. But we did find that there was a 4 to 6 minute increase in the travel time on northbound general purpose lanes. But we did also see that despite that, it does reduce cut-through traffic on local roads, even in that 2025 timeframe without the Maryland project in place. And on the next slide, you'll see what we've been doing in terms of public outreach. We've had a number of meetings. We were on the verge of having our public hearing on March 12th. Which seems a long time ago, but that morning of March 12th, we decided that we would cancel that meeting because of what was happening relative to the pandemic in our region. And so we were able to kind of restart that work with reaching out to the public in the September timeframe. We did have a virtual question and answer session on September 28th and also on September 30th. We videotaped all of that. It's available on our website. People can go in and review that if they want to. You can see the attendees there. We had about 96 in a virtual Q&A session on September 28th, and then 85 in September 30th. And then we had a kind of a two-step process with our public hearing. We did a virtual public hearing on October 5th with about 170 attendees. And then we followed that up with a by appointment, socially distanced public hearing at the community center there in McLean on October 8th. We had 25 attendees at that location. And as Rob mentioned, our original comment period was going to be completed in the October timeframe, but we extended that to December 4th just to allow a little more time for communities to engage with the project team to provide answers to questions that they might have. We do have a meeting, and then you can see a listing of meetings. I would note that I know Jennifer Jabrul is going to be speaking a little bit later tonight on the transit study. That is a separate study, but yet coordinated with our work. We have a public meeting on November 18th that will be jointly hosted by DRPT as well as our team to work with the community and let them know what's going on with them, with the project and with the transit study, and engage with the community. And so that will be November 18th in a virtual setting. So on the next slide, you'll see some of the primary concerns that we have heard. We do have a bicycle trail that's along the that we're providing along 495 that generally is located behind the noise walls. And so we did hear from some direct impact adjacent communities concern about privacy and security, and we are working with them on that. Impacts to trees was another concern. About 35 acres are anticipated to be affected by the phase 1 construction. VDOT has committed to do a tree survey to identify the types and sizes of trees so that we can better inform our revegetation plan. Impacts to Scotts Run. This is a stream that runs along and underneath the Capitol Beltway in this area. And we've actually done a site visit with Fairfax County staff to work with them on identifying what can be done. This project impacts about 3,000 linear feet of stream. About 70% of the stream that we're impacted is already pretty degraded, and it's because it's at the bottom of a watershed that upstream is a lot of very intense development. And so we're looking to find ways to improve those stream banks. Certainly noise walls. And then we've had a question about, is this project really needed given that traffic volumes have decreased since COVID-19? And then also some questions about what's proposed at the Dulles Toll Road interchange. So on the next slide, you'll just see these are more direct impact community concerns. We are replacing existing walls. If they're impacted, they'll be at least as high as what they are today in terms of elevation. We did identify some new location for a new wall, as well as extending some existing sound walls. In terms of COVID-19, which you'll see on the next slide, I'm sure you've seen some of the statistics in our region. We are teleworking we're the highest region in the country in terms of teleworking. 55% of our households, according to a Fuller Institute survey, are able to have at least one person teleworking, which is the highest in the nation. Pretty incredible. And yet we are at 80 to 90% of pre-COVID levels on our traffic volumes. And you can see that graph, which is from a statewide plan, but we did commit to doing a sensitivity analysis specifically in this quarter. So we'll be looking at that to understand what the impacts might be and do our best to project what that might mean for this quarter. The next series of slides show the Dulles Toll Road interchange. You can see 495 is proceeding across the slide from left to right. Excuse me. And what the improvements are. This is the phase 1 improvements where we're adding some ramps that will help with the congestion that we see out there today on the eastbound Dulles Toll Road as you try to get to northbound 495. The second slide shows what could be included in a second phase, and this would be after the southbound lanes come online, or after Maryland comes online and we have more demand in that southbound direction. And then the final slide shows what is not funded and is not committed to, but that could be constructed in the future. And I would just point out that this interchange concepts reflects what was envisioned back in 2010 when the Beltway was originally envisioned. It was part of our traffic studies at that time, and all of these movements are included in the constrained long-range plan. One thing that came about as part of our study is that these were originally, back in the 2010 timeframe, thought to be moving to be in place by 2030. With our study, we are showing these moving out to a horizon year of 2045. And that's something we've worked with FHWA on. In terms of our partnership with Transurban, we are working with a framework agreement, as you can see on the next slide. We currently have an agreement with them, and so we are working under that agreement. But we still retain responsibility as VDOT for doing the environmental approvals, for doing the traffic studies, which are included under our interchange justification report, and all of our coordination with federal and state and local agencies. Transurban is providing the engineering support for the design. They are procuring a design builder. They will develop a finance plan. This project is being planned with zero public subsidy, which is a very important goal of the project. And then, of course, when it's constructed, they would be responsible to operate and maintain the facility. On the next slide, you'll see some information about our coordination with Maryland. I'm sure most of you are aware that Maryland is also undergoing an environmental study. They are looking at a much larger corridor, as you can see, than our 3-mile corridor, and had to consider many alternatives. So they are doing an environmental impact statement. In addition, they are concurrently working to procure a developer. So they've already selected 4 teams, qualified teams, and they're working to select a developer early in 2021. So our coordination work with them has been focused on making sure that both projects are compatible, they can be seamlessly delivered, that the work that we're doing will help to support Maryland being able to deliver their project. And in 2019, November of 2019, about a year ago, the 2 governors agreed to fund New American Legion Bridge infrastructure, and we're continuing to work with Maryland based on those agreements that were forged. And then the last slide just shows our schedule, where we're at. So we are wrapping up our NEPA. We're really actively out there, as Rob Carey mentioned, soliciting input, trying to finalize our NEPA document, which we anticipated would be in early 2021. And assuming we stay on schedule, we could have this project delivered by the end of 2024. And with that, I'll turn it back to Chairman Randall.
Yep, it would be me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you very much. Supervisors, I'm sorry. Authority members, do you have any questions? And how about if you just have any questions, you just kind of turn your mic on and turn your screen on, the video on, and jump in. How's that? That may be a little easier.
Chair Randall.
Yes,
Jeff
sir, Mr. McKay. Yes.
Yeah, I thank Susan for her presentation. She gave a very similar presentation to our board on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, there's a lot of merit to this project as it moves forward, but there are some things that I just want to reiterate are still outstanding concerns. And probably the main one on page 5 is where we talk about the general travel lanes and general purpose lanes, and there being an increase in commuting time in the general purpose lanes. I will just say that, in all of our other express lanes projects, one of the big justifications for them is that they're improving travel time for everyone, not just the ones who can afford to use the express lanes. And so I do still hope that there's an engineering improvement that would help iron out that increase in travel time to the general purpose lanes, because it is a big selling point of the express lanes in general. And I think it's an expectation of the public that if we're going to allow this project to move forward, that it improves commuting time for everyone. The only other thing I would say is, and you heard this on Tuesday, there still are some pretty significant concerns with stormwater that I know, while we've had county staff walk the site, we'll be weighing in with you on some stormwater concerns that still remain on the project, and I think can be further massaged. And then lastly, you mentioned the transit study, and there is a lot of confusion out there about how the transit study lines up with this, the timing of the completion of the transit study, the meeting with the public, and how that ties into the final contract dates that you have in your timeline. And I'll just reiterate, what I said on Tuesday, which is, I'm hoping at a minimum, this project does not preclude any of the future transit enhancements that could be completed in this area as a result of the data in the transit report as we move forward, because we're not going to get a second chance at this. We got to do it right the first time and make sure that we're not tying our hands for any other transit enhancements that could come down the road. That being said, this is a very important project. Obviously, this area is chronically gridlocked and we need to do something, but I would just encourage VDOT and the folks who have submitted this project to continue to work on some of those things, and hopefully we'll see improvements in those areas, because they do remain outstanding concerns of the board. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for all that information. Anybody else have any comments?
Madam Chair, this is Ms. Crystal. This is a question,
yes.
in fact, rather than a comment for Mr. Carey, Ms. Shaw. Following up actually on Chairman McKay's comments about the transit study, let me just phrase this as a question. Why is there no transit contribution or component of this project in the way that there was with the 95 and 395 express lanes?
Well, I'm happy to jump in, and it's actually worked out really well that Jennifer Mitchell and the DRPT team are here following us. We really wanted to have these back to back because I think it's important to bring those together. But I can tell you this, that the Secretary Valentine, is absolutely committed to ensuring that nothing is taken off the table in terms of transit. Nothing with the project would preclude transit in the corridor. The transit study is a follow-on study, but simultaneously with this, follow-on in the sense of American Legion Bridge coming on board and really then opening up that corridor. The other thing I wanted to say about opening up that corridor is we do continue to look at, I'll say, innovative and technology-based solutions to see if there is a way to help with that issue of the general purpose lane travel time through there. But certainly in terms of this project and the transit, we continue to look. I will say this is an extraordinarily expensive 2.5 to 3 miles worth of project. And in the end, it has to, for Transurban to move forward with it, it has to pencil out in a way that makes sense. So we continue to work on that. I don't have a definitive answer on that tonight, obviously. But, nothing is off the table in terms of that. And I can tell you that the Secretary has expressed a lot of interest to me in that explicitly about how transit in this corridor not be precluded. And we see that as a key piece in the long-term solution in this corridor.
Great. I'm happy to hear that. I will say, when we saw widenings on 66 and 95, 395, transit wasn't just not precluded, it was a commitment with the concessions or the dedicated revenues. You know, I appreciated in the presentation the comment about the desire to get cars off of arterial or community roads. We need to get cars off the roads entirely. And the only way we're going to do that is with transit. And I would very much like to see a firmer commitment than just not precluding. I know that the secretary and certainly Director Mitchell share that sensibility, but certainly this is a massive widening project. I think that the impact of 35 acres of trees alone really indicates the environmental degradation that's going to be associated with it. And if we're going to do all of that, and we know that widening simply induces demand, and be back to the same situation of congestion on arterial roads as well as on this roadway, some years out, I think that would be disappointing indeed. And I think the only way we break that cycle is with transit. So I'll just take the opportunity to express my strong hope that there will be a firmer commitment to transit alternatives as this moves forward.
And I certainly understand the comment, and I will tell you that specifically one of the reasons that Secretary Valentine asked me to actively get involved in this at the public hearing stage is to keep her abreast of exactly where the comments are and what the concerns are, and to make sure she's aware of that. So I'll take that back to her tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carey. Appreciate that.
And Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. Rome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I have a couple questions and comments, if that's okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, Madam Chair, I was just requesting permission to speak. Okay. So the first thing is I just want to first second what Board Member Crystal just said, that when you have a massive multi-billion-dollar project that's on the table and it does not inherently have a built-in mass transit system with it, I like the idea that we can do something multimodal in terms of the bicycle path, like, that we were talking, that was mentioned earlier. Multimodal is good, and the feature of our projects, of our transportation projects, inherently has to include multimodal solutions to that. That's good. I think, you'll have support across the board pretty much. At the same time here, let's say if you're Board Member Crystal and you represent a very transit heavy area in Arlington, for example, where you have a lot of access to Metro, and you've got people who are working up in Maryland, you're going to want to have those alternatives to having to go through DC and basically go up the red line, especially when the red line catches on fire every other week, as it is. So then the second thing I would mention, though, is that when you live in Prince William County like I do, and I've got a lot of constituents who work in Rockville, or maybe they go all the way up to Germantown to go to one of the federal facilities over there. Well, you've got a lot of people who right now, the only game in town that they have for these outside the VRE structure, more or less, is by driving. Right now, there is no Omni ride, for example, that goes to Dulles. There's no Omni ride that goes outside the Beltway. There's no Omni ride that goes into Maryland. We don't have this integrated system mapped out, let alone here's a great example where we're talking about adding additional lanes, toll lanes in this case. And if you want the alternative to having to pay an arm and a leg to use them, transit is the way to go, right? Well, if this is a great place where we could put BRT, for example, but there's no integrated plan for it, as much as there's simply not precluding the idea thereof. But at the same time, when we talk about planning at the local government level, we talk about having adequate existing infrastructure in place before you build. If this becomes an afterthought, it will be treated as an afterthought. It needs to, number one, be a commitment. And number two, if it's not going to have that commitment, we have to question when we are dealing with already high tolls for some of the Beltway projects to begin with, or some of the Beltway commutes to begin with. Why are we going to then, go forward with the environmental degradation that Board Member Crystal was just speaking about, when we're supposed to be serious about climate change, when we're supposed to be serious about protecting the environment, when it seems that we're not really forward thinking with this project as much as just trying to check some boxes of saying, oh, well, it was a good idea for us to think about mass transit and maybe you can do that someday. That it has to be prioritized, and it has to be prioritized from the front, even if it's not on the rail, at least a connectivity, or at least connectivity through a bus system that involves OmniRide, that involves Loudon Transit, that involves Fairfax Connect, or whatever it is. I really think we need to do a better job of incorporating that from the design phase, as opposed to maybe we'll get around to it at some point.
Madam Chairman, Delegate Watts.
Thank you, Ms. Ramos. Hey, Ms. Watts, before you talk, so I'm going to, after Ms. Watts speaks, if it's okay, we're going to wrap this conversation up. We have a lot more things to do tonight, and so I know this is really important, but we have a fairly long agenda. I was kidding about being here to 11. I actually don't want to be here to 11. So, after this remark, we'll wrap it up, wrap up this item. Ms. Watts, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I sit here almost incredulous that what I think I'm hearing is the broad definition of transit, which includes all of the HOV uses as well as express buses. And I'm also hearing that there's a problem of added congestion in the general purpose lanes. I'm extremely familiar with the 95, and 50% of the people who are on the HOV lanes are riding free because of HOV, because of multi-passenger cars and express buses. I am just incredulous, if I'm hearing right, that this is going forward, and this is all being done without a state subsidy. If things have changed so much that we need to renegotiate the state subsidy situation on the Beltway express lanes and on 95 express lanes, so be it. But if you don't have that incentive, then you will have the congestion on the general purpose lanes because you aren't offering what, again, is fully embraced on 95, with half, I repeat myself, of the people using it daily are riding free because of the transit alternative.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Ms. Shaw, you there still?
Yep.
Thank you for no, that wasn't Ms. Shaw. Yeah, no, that was Ms. Shaw who gave that. Thank you for your the presentation. Authority members, you have the presentation, and if you want to send questions in or have any other comments, you can do that via email to Ms. Shaw, and I'm sure they will get back with you with answers. Thank you, Ms. Shaw. We appreciate your report. We're going to go to the next presentation on the agenda tonight, which is the I-95 American Legion Bridge Transit, the TDM study, which also is going to, I think, could take a while to get through. Ms. Williams from DRPT, are you on the line with us, ma'am?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine.
Perfect. Good evening. I'm Seattle
Good
Williams.
evening.
I'm the Virginia Transit Planning Manager for DRPT, and I'm also the project manager for this study. So I'm just going to give, hopefully it won't take too long, an update on where we are. Next slide, please. In November of 2019, the governors of Virginia and Maryland executed a bi-state bipartisan accord to create a new unified capital beltway, replacing the aging American Legion Bridge and relieving congestion at one of the country's worst traffic choke points. This study is meant to complement ongoing plans managed by VDOT and MDOT, which will provide a region-wide seamless network of reliable travel options around the Capital Beltway and along Interstates 270, 95, 395, and 66. I also want to mention that this is a joint study funded and managed by DRPT and MDOT, and it's separate from the improvement projects in the corridor. Next slide, please. So in terms of objectives, we're looking at potential modal solutions that can be used to reduce congestion, improve trip reliability and regional connections, and enhance existing and planned multimodal mobility and connectivity. This study considers trips between market pairs in Virginia and Maryland that use the American Legion Bridge, and considers planned and proposed improvements within the study area. And again, I want to emphasize that this study is being conducted separate from the NEPA process currently underway for the 495 Next, American Legion Bridge, and Maryland P3 program projects. Next slide, please. So we've taken on a study process that includes a series of stakeholder meetings. Our most recent stakeholder meeting was held in October. I'm sorry?
No, that wasn't me. Everyone, keep your mics muted. That wasn't me, Ms. Williams, but everybody keep your mics muted. Thanks. Ms. Williams.
Our most recent stakeholder meeting was held in October and was intended to gain feedback on the draft recommendations that were presented to the CTB also in October. We've also undertaken some corridor surveys. The first survey was intended to gain an understanding of commuter choices across the bridge. And our second survey went live just last week, and the purpose of that survey is to seek input on draft recommendations. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So in terms of stakeholders, we've been meeting with our stakeholder working group throughout the study process. Our stakeholder representatives from the agencies and organizations that provide transit or TDM services in the study area, in addition to regional entities including MWCOG, NBTC, and NBTA. Our partners at VDOT and MDOT have also been engaged throughout the process. Next slide, please. In terms of travel demand, we realize that there is significant travel between 355 corridor and Silver Spring in Maryland to Virginia destinations like Tysons, Dunloring, and the Virginia Route 7 corridor. A great deal of transit services operate in the study area. However, no transit services today directly link major activity centers. It's also important to note that there's less travel demand from Virginia to activity centers in the Maryland study area, and the demand that does exist is geographically spread out. Almost 2/3 of all of the trips between the states and the study are produced by Maryland. Next slide, please. So as we've worked on looking at daily origin and destination paired trips, we've come up with a range of potential recommendations that will then narrow down to a more quantitative analysis. For each of these key destinations on the Virginia side, I'm sorry, I think you may have skipped a slide. Can you go back one? Thanks. I'm sorry, can you go forward one? Go back one. Back one more?
Back one more? Yeah.
Perfect.
Now, stop there. There you go.
For each of these key destinations on the Virginia, I'm sorry, it looks like it went back. It went forward again or went back. Can you go?
Okay.
Perfect.
Stop right there. Nope. We were so close. Nope. Right there. Stop right there. Right. Nope. Is it jumping around by itself? One more. Go up one more to the next one and then stop. That is the one.
Okay.
Nope.
Well, okay.
Slide 7.
Just keep
Slide
talking.
7.
Just keep talking.
So for each of those key destinations on the Virginia side, so Tysons, Reston, Dunloring, and Arlington, as you see on the slide, we have a number of transit options. Keep in mind that some of these options may not warrant further evaluation if they don't meet the main objectives of the study or if they overlap with other existing options that are already available. In terms of preliminary potential recommendations for commuter assistance programs, parking and facilities and technology, they'll be screened to identify any fatal flaws that would preclude a recommendation from advancing. So we want to make sure that there's no overlapping of these programs. And we're also looking at things like readiness and cost when it comes to these programs. Next slide, please. In addition to transit options, we're also looking at a range of technology and assistance options. On the Virginia side, most of these technology options align with work that is going on with the Regional Multimodal Mobility Program, or RM3P, that's currently in development in other corridors. So we're just keeping an eye on what's coming out of that program. And we're also looking at commuter assistance program options in addition to the ones that already serve this corridor. So in this case, we're looking at more targeted outreach to users of the corridor. Next slide, please. This this is just a study timeline. We're currently modeling the transit options and developing costs for the potential recommendations. We're also holding a joint public meeting with VDOT on November 18th, as Susan previously mentioned, and we'll be presenting our recommendations and taking input from the public. And over the next couple of weeks, we'll be refining the recommendations and present them to the CTB in December. Next slide, please. So we just want to emphasize that keeping track of the study is easy. We have a study webpage on the DOT website under major initiatives. All of the study materials are posted for review, including the stakeholder presentations and minutes. And we've also included a comment link on the webpage that can be used for public comment. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Chair Randall.
Well, thank you, and thank you for being so calm as we went, as the slides got a little messed up. We don't know quite what happened there, but we appreciate it. Members, again, if you have questions, just put your video on and put your mic on, and we'll take a couple of questions right now.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, and thanks for this presentation. I think you heard earlier comments, and I'd reiterate them, that it seems that we're out of sync. We have a highway project that's moving forward and is funded, and a transportation study that doesn't seem to be linked up and not funded. So I think the concern is we get the one without the other. And I think we've heard from a number of groups, and I think that letter should be circulated to VDOT and DRPT for a response. The second point I want to make is that the Transportation Planning Board and the COG Board of Directors approved environmental targets to reduce greenhouse gases by 50% from the 2005 level by 2030. My question is, how do these two projects achieve that? And finally, a lot of this depends on collaboration with Maryland. We know that the Maryland expansion is a very controversial issue in Maryland. What coordination has there been with the Maryland transit providers so that we could move forward rapidly on the transit elements as you're now studying them? Thank you.
So,
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry.
No, go on.
So we have been coordinating closely with Maryland and with MTA. We haven't locked down the providers as of yet. We're still trying to get through the modeling and come up with our final recommendations, but that's something that we're working on. And as far as air quality, we have noticed that question or that comment has come up previously, and that's something that that we'll be looking into.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, question, Watts.
Yes. Yes, Ms. Watts.
Quick question. Why isn't Dulles Airport a destination in the study?
During
Good question. Thank you.
the preliminary model that we've done, we noticed that there just wasn't enough demand for that route. I mean, that is something that we can go back and talk to our consultants about.
Again, I think you need to raise it because as a alternative, especially for the Bethesda area, I think it needs to be looked at and make sure you shouldn't include that traffic.
Okay.
Madam Chair, may I ask just a very...
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Crystal.
Just a very tactical question for Ms. Williams. Thank you so much for the presentation. Very helpful for me to see some of the may be available. Can you tell us where on your website we might be able to find it? I am sort of struggling to find it, or is it possible for you to circulate a link to the authority staff to get it to us?
Sure, I can send a link. If you go to the website and then on the left side of the page, if If you click on transit and then highlights, it'll pop up. It'll be the second link that pops up, but I can definitely send a link out.
Thank you so much. Look forward to exploring further.
Okay.
Chair Randall, it's
Well,
Jeff
thank you so
McKay.
much.
Chair, can I just make
Hey,
just
Mr.
one
McKay,
very,
how are you?
very, very quick comment? I'm well. I
Yes,
I
sir.
think one of the problems here with this presentation, and this was raised as well earlier this week, is really the lack of citizen participation. I look at 3 stakeholder meetings to date, and I see targeted residential outreach that's happened, and I think a lot of people have felt like they haven't been a part of this study. And so I would just suggest that, when we move forward on these, we really need to think about involving the broader public earlier in the conversation than kind of as a last minute thought. And a lot of us, including many of us elected officials, were not even fully aware of the study and the scope of it when it began. And so there is some concern about that, and obviously, look forward to seeing the transit study when it's completed and being able to review it. But understand that for a lot of people, that's the beginning part of them seeing and commenting on it. And I think we probably could have advanced them in the process a little bit earlier, and hope that we consider that for future studies.
And Chairman
All right.
Randall, if I may. Chairman McKay, thank you very much for your comment. And I know there has been a lot of questions about when public involvement was going to begin and how this when the study results were going to start to come out. We are planning again to have the public meeting coming up with VDOT next month. We did want to be able to get through an opportunity to get some of the technical information together. We did announce it at a couple different points, but probably not to the CTB, and probably not at points where, looking back, that we probably could have publicized it more broadly, but points definitely taken. We do look forward to getting a lot more public involvement in this going forward. I do think this is a really important study, and we've got some really good work going on, and I think we'll get some good recommendations coming out of this. So we definitely look forward to getting the public more involved and having more awareness of what's going on too.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Okay, we're going to thank you very much for the presentation. We appreciate it, Ms. Williams. Appreciate that very much. We're going to go on to our next item. Dev, the connection seems to be getting kind of shaky. Is there anything in there that you're sitting at your house? Never mind. No, I don't know where I thought you were, but you're sitting at home, so forget I just asked that. All right, the next update is a presentation is the VT-Trans update, the VTrans, I'm sorry, update, and Jatinder, are you on?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine. Jatinder, can you do me a favor and pronounce your last name for me?
Sure. It's my name is Jatinder Ramchandani. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to share this update with the board.
Okay.
It is
Ready.
Ramchandani. Thank you.
Ramchandani, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and those in attendance. My role within the Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment is to assist the Commonwealth Transportation Board, Ms. Hines and her colleagues on the board, with the preparation of Virginia's statewide multimodal transportation plan. It is branded as VTrans. So the purpose of today's presentation is to provide an overview of the policy that is currently available for public review and comment. This draft policy is to prioritize the transportation needs that have been identified based earlier this year, and at the time the board directed us to prioritize them. So before I get to the policy and share the details with the board, I would like to take a few quick minutes to go over provide an overview, and as well as share the policy aspects that will be shared with the CTB in December for action in January. Next slide, please. For context and overview, VTrans is, as I mentioned, is the brand name for the state's transportation plan. It has 4 major elements. So the CTB's vision, guiding principles, which is used to essentially identify transportation needs in Virginia. These transportation needs, ma'am, and members of the board are utilized for screening funding requests in smart scale. The needs that the board identified earlier this year were used for the current ongoing round of smart scale. And in January, again, the board requested or directed us to prioritize those needs in a transparent and replicable manner. So which is the purpose of today's presentation. Next slide, please. This slide is for the reference. There are several state and federal requirements that this plan is trying to meet. Next slide, please. One of the key aspects is we are fully aware of all the planning effort that is done at the county level, jurisdictions level, NVTA, NVTC, TPB, and the VTrans, which is the transportation plan, is informed by that. The code does require us to take an independent perspective as well, which is what we have tried to do with this plan. Next slide, please. The transportation needs that we are prioritizing are the column in the middle, and these are, as I mentioned, they get utilized for smart scale, and they essentially are designed to go 4 years beyond the current 6-year improvement program. There is a component for long-term needs that includes the technology trends, the system vulnerability, and things of that sort. That will be available for public review and comment next year. Next slide, please. As far as the significance of the draft policy that I will be sharing starting with the next slide, the real significance in terms of dollars and the impact on the jurisdictions, the benefits, and how it gets and in the end gets utilized is that this policy, based on the direction from the board, may be utilized for allocation of some of the planning dollars. These are the dollars that VDOT and DRPT use for conducting studies in different jurisdictions, Fairfax, Arlington, different towns and cities in Northern Virginia, as well as those beyond in the Commonwealth. These priorities that are established based on the draft policy may also get utilized for other planning and programming purposes. So it can have real significant or meaningful impact as far as the allocation of dollars are concerned, and which is why we wanted to make everyone aware of it as well. Next slide, please. So there are 4, I will not get in the details of the policy, but I would like to share with the board and those in attendance the 4 key levers that are behind this policy. These are the same levers that will be presented to the board, CTB, if everything goes as planned next month. So the 4 steps, my intention is to go one step at a time and just provide the main policy levers that are in the policy before sharing the results. Next slide, please. So the transportation needs were identified in January, and at the time, board directed us to prioritize them. And our recommendation, the staff recommendation at this time is to establish 2 sets of priorities. One is a statewide priority, which is looking at corridors and facilities that can have direct or indirect benefit to those who live near or beyond those corridors. And another is the 9 sets of priorities for each of the 9 VDOT construction districts. These are, so for example, in Northern Virginia, there's the Northern Virginia Construction District will have its own set of priorities. That's step 1. Next slide, please. And then for each of these transportation needs that have been identified, these needs vary from congestion, reliability, transit access, bicycle access, transit access for equity emphasis area, transportation demand management. 2 factors are used: severity, which is how bad a problem is, and magnitude, how many users, riders, and residents can potentially benefit from it. Next slide, please. the intention in the third step is once that is done, then to ensure that there is some level of equating a roadway or a corridor where there may be only one transportation need with another where there may be a number of high, medium, or low transportation need, we essentially utilize some weighting. Next slide, please. So on this slide, what this slide is showing, and it's a really busy slide, so I will leave this on for a couple of seconds just so that you can look at. What this slide is showing on the second column from the left is all the different types of needs. They vary from congestion, reliability, rail on-time performance, transportation demand management, and safety. The column in the middle, which says weighting statewide priorities, shows the congestion will have, for the draft or the staff recommended at this time, 25% of the total weight. Safety will have 25%, and so on and so forth. That is what is being used for establishing statewide priorities. I mentioned there is another set of priorities for each of the 9 construction districts, and for that we relied on weighting that is included in Smart Scale Funding Program. And in Smart Scale Funding Program, Northern Virginia Construction District is area type A, which is congestion will have 25% of the weight, improved reliability 20% of the weight. There are some minor modifications that we have made, but it is largely based on Smart Scale Funding Program that has received these weightings from localities and regional entities. Next slide, please. And in the fourth and the final step, so we first establish 2 buckets, statewide and district priorities. Second, we utilize severity of a need and magnitude of a need to establish weighting. And the third, we apply those weights to get to the last step where we make minor adjustments based on co-located bridge and pavement rehabilitation needs, as well as needs related to flooding. Needs related to mitigation of flooding related issues, projected or historic. Next slide, please. So those are the 4 steps, and as well as the overview. I think that wanted to take a minute to share this map, which is showing the priorities, district priorities of construction priorities for the Northern Virginia Construction District on this map. This map is available on the link below, and I can share the link with the staff for circulation as well on our website, vtrans.org. And this map will show not only the priorities for Northern Virginia Construction District, but for the rest of the state as well. And the map that is on the screen right now is showing priorities for the Northern Virginia Construction District. Red color is priority 1. Orange on this map is priority 2, yellow is priority 3, and green is priority 4. The point to note here is that even where there is a green color, there is a need. It's just there are, based on this method that we just discussed, it might be there are needs that might be of higher priority based on the staff recommended scenario. So this map is available for public review and comment, and there's a lot more information available with that as well. Next slide, please. So the map that was shown on the previous slide, this slide is essentially converting that red, orange, yellow, and green color into the mileage. So what this slide is showing, priority 1 is the leftmost, priority 2, and priority 4 is on the rightmost. So priority 1 through 4. Northern Virginia Construction District for this will have 47 miles of directional miles of priority 1 locations, 190 miles of priority 2 locations, 455 priority 3, and then there's over 4,000 miles, directional miles of priority 4. Next slide, please. I mentioned there are two sets of priorities, district priority and the statewide priority. The statewide priority is also available for public review and comment at this time. And this is showing this, the map on the slide is showing a screenshot of the statewide priorities as they fall under the Northern Virginia Construction District. Next slide, please. In total, there is approximately 43 directional miles of statewide priorities. And the very point of statewide priorities is irrespective of their location, they benefit directly or indirectly those beyond where these locations are. And so with that in mind, there is approximately 43 miles of statewide priority location in Northern Virginia, 31 miles in Fredericksburg, and 15 or so miles in Hampton Roads area. That is essentially the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. Next slide, please. One item to consider, and we want to make aware, the board, MBTA board aware, as well as those in attendance, is that we are fully aware of the fact that, as Ms. Hines has pointed out to us, that there are projects that are either currently funded or are in the works. So for example, there was a discussion for 495, there are projects funded along the Beltway as well as along up and down 95 corridor. These priorities are not reflective of, not reflecting how those projects will address the needs. So it is, in other words, there will have to be a step beyond the priorities that are available for public review and comments before they get utilized for allocation of dollars. And it is something that we plan to do in the coming months. Next slide, please. In terms of the schedule, this draft policy is available for public review and comment, which ends on November 30th. We have held 2 workshops, and we will be holding 2 more virtual workshops, one tomorrow and the third one tomorrow and the fourth one next week, before presenting this item along with all the comments that we received to the CTB at the December workshop with plan for request for action in January. Next slide, please. So that was the end of my presentation. I fully realize that this information is probably not very suitable for a slide deck, and so I request the board members, if you like more information, we are available to provide that. As well as I will share the link with NVTA staff so that they can circulate, and you can, if you have time to take a look at, please do so. And Madam Chair, I'm available for any questions and comments that you may have at this time.
Mr. Ramjamdani, that was really helpful. Thank you so much. Authority members, do you have questions?
Chair
If so,
Randall,
you can just go on and turn your camera and your mic on.
Chair
Yes,
Randall,
ma'am.
this is Mary. I just wanted to provide a tiny bit more context for you, my colleagues, on the authority. It's been my practice ever since I've been a CTB member. Every time these policy changes or different ways to approach allocating money are proposed, that we set up, VDOT facilitates a round robin with your staff, myself and Scott Kasperwitz, who's the other CTB member from up here. So that we're going to do that November 19th, and we'll bring your staffs in small groups, and it's a real chance for us to hear very directly what they think about this, so that we're well informed as we head into that December meeting that Jitendra talked about. So I wanted you to know that. The other thing I would say about this is VTrans is analogous in many ways to transaction. It's just the big statewide plan. But the challenge that we have at CTB is keeping the pipeline full, or a way to bring projects into the pipeline that can then be considered for smart scale. And so one of the things we're struggling with right now, and you all know this very well, is there's not a whole lot of planning money anywhere in any of your budgets and the state budget, et cetera. And yet some of these projects really they need engineering and they need planning. And so part of what we're thinking this may help us with is to understand where are the high priority projects where some planning assistance may help those projects move into the queue more easily. So we haven't figured all the money out or anything like that, but I just wanted to give you that context. We did this exercise, I think 4 years ago, but it wasn't nearly as robust. It wasn't as heavily vetted in the metrics point, and we really hadn't figured the money part out. So I hope that this iteration is going to be much more useful actually to all of us. So with that, I'll be quiet, and I look forward to hearing your comments. And please, if your jurisdictions want to send us letters, feel free to do that. By the end of the month is probably good because the CTB meeting's early in the month in December. Thanks.
The institutional knowledge that you have, Mary, is always helpful. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. Anybody else have any questions before we go to our
Chair Randall.
Mr. McKay?
Yeah, just a very brief, it's more a comment and it's in response to what Mary just said. And I appreciate the scheduled time with jurisdictional staff. I know one of the concerns that's come to my attention is we obviously support the prioritization process, but I do get concerned about all the prioritization procedures we already have in place with Smart Scale, DRPT's merit process, and to a certain extent, how these come together can be very confusing to the public. And especially if the same type of proposed project comes out with a dramatically different outcome from one planning document to another program. And so I think, I love the prioritization. I love how technical we're getting, but I also am concerned about, it being understandable to the general public how these things relate to each other. And I would just put that out there as a comment. I mean, we score, we analyze, we do that so well in so many different places, and it's confusing to folks what the difference is between them. So I just throw that out as a comment for you, Mary, to think about, but definitely appreciate the commitment to be meeting with the jurisdictional staff.
Thanks, Jeff. That's a good point. It would be great if we had a diagram that could help people understand, because everything then also has judgment in it at the end,
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
I just had kind of like one follow-up policy. I'm just curious. How is this policy going to tie the funding into like the different projects? I don't know if I missed that in one of the slide decks or.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Mr. Wood, at this time, it is not directly tied to, at least the staff recommendation is not directly tied to a particular project. The consideration is that all these are transportation needs that will likely require multimodal solutions that may have to be vetted and discussed with localities as well as public that may be directly benefiting or getting adversely impacted by it. So at this time, these are just transportation needs that have been prioritized. Any project recommendations that may come out will be at a later point and will be done in consultation with the localities and the public. Mr. Wood, did I answer your question?
Mr. Wood, Derek?
Yeah. So right now the answer is it's not tied to any of the projects or policy. In just short.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
All right.
That's okay.
Okay. We're going to go on. Thank you, Jatinder. We appreciate that so much. Thanks for everything. Thanks, Mary, for your, as I said, institutional knowledge is always a great thing to have. We're going to go on to our only other action item, which is action item number 10. Ms. Wheeler, I will be coming to you for a motion. Ms. Backman, do you have anything you'd like to say about this item before I go to Ms. Wheeler for a motion?
Unless there are questions, Chair Randall.
On action item number 10, the approval of RSTP from Route 15 in the Prince William County district, Prince William County. Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, Ms. Wheeler, would you like to make a motion?
I will make a motion to make the approval of Prince William County request to reallocate the $11 million in RSTP funds as noted in the resolution.
McKay seconds.
Second.
So I'm going to give that second to Mr. Parrish because he lives in the county. Kinda. He lives in the city and the county. Kinda.
Hey, Chair,
All right, discussion
Chair
on
Randall,
that
I
motion.
actually do.
You do too, but he got here before you and he's sitting next to me.
Jeff thinks he represents the whole region, so. Yeah.
Now, Miss Rome, if you ever want to come to the room with us, we love that, but you know.
I've been there
But,
with you.
Mr. Parrish is
I
sitting
have
right
been
next to
there
me.
eating Panera next to you.
Yeah,
Really
well,
good thought,
he's
Justin.
sitting right here, though. All right, motion's made and seconded by Mr. Parrish. Discussion on the motion, Ms. Wheeler.
I do want to say that this is going to fund an important smart scale project. The garage is 1,400 spaces in the vicinity of I-95 and a regional activity center. And it's coming off an inactive project. And, we would love to have the approval to do this. It's a great use of the money and will be utilized quickly and make the project actually be able to obtain full funding. So.
Chair Randall, I have a question for
Anybody
the
else?
chair.
Yes.
Ms. Rome, before you have your question, it strikes me that you just said, I've been there with you eating Panera. Like the most thing you remembered the most when you that you were eating Panera. That's hilarious.
I'm an Italian
Yes,
woman. I always
ma'am.
remember food first. Thank you, Chair. I guess I have a question for Chair Wheeler. Because I know that this is right now an inactive project over in Haymarket and something that, obviously, I care very much about, as of course you do too. I mean, you live very close to this. Can you just basically talk about, at this point, what plans do we actually have on the table within Prince William, whether it's coming from the Department of Transportation within the county, or if there's something more broad in terms of actually dealing with that Route 15 overpass and widening project, over by the railroad track that we will eventually need at some point. But if it's inactive right now, I can understand the transferal funds. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and so I think talking about why it's inactive, we put the $11 million out there to try to get funding from other various sources, and we've tried 4 or 5 ways to no avail whatsoever, because I think the project itself is tens of millions of dollars. This was only a portion of it that we were trying to leverage, and we've tried a lot of different ways to get money for that project, and it doesn't either rank high enough or various other things. And so at the moment, we've sort of run out of things to try, which is why it's inactive. And we decided, instead of having the money just sit there allocated toward it, we'd rather use it for a project that actually needs funding and is ready to go.
Madam Chair, I have a follow-up question.
Yes, Miss. Yes.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'll just ask Chair Wheeler then, at this point, so I understand exactly what you were just talking about. And what I want to know is, will this still be on the long-range plans for the county, though, to eventually try to secure funding for this project? Because if you need help with that, if you need an advocate for that project, I'm happy to, to step into that role and, and work with you all on that, because this is, this is a safety issue for that area as much of it is a transportation issue, or, as much as it is a throughput issue, because when that railroad track goes down, that hinders our emergency response vehicles. It hinders first responders in general, because we don't want them having to go down Washington Street, along Jefferson, or down Old Carolina in order to, get around that section to get over by Haymarket Elementary School. So, I do have safety concerns about that general intersection, as I know you share the same concerns.
Mm-hmm. I am sure it's not removed from our plans and any of our long-range plans, and I will verify that and get back to you. It's just been being able to fund it to the level that's needed. We just have not been successful in doing that. And I know that they've tried a myriad of different ways to do that. And even, saying, hey, we'll partially, we've got $11 million, we'll partially fund this, can we leverage it? And with nothing happening, unfortunately. So. But I will talk to them about that and verify that it's still in our long-range plan to take care of.
All right, so the motion was made by Ms. Wheeler and seconded by Mr. Parrish. What I will say is if anyone opposes the motion, please say aye. Hearing none, that-
Chair Randall, may I cast an abstain on this? That's to not
You
cast
certainly
judgment
may.
on the county. Thank you. I'd like
You
to.
certainly may, yeah.
All right, I'd like to
Yep.
abstain on the vote. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so that motion will carry 1301 with no one voting against it and Ms. Rome abstaining on the vote. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
All
you
right,
very much.
so that's the only other action item we had. Next on number 11, we have a fairly brief, it will be fairly brief, General Assembly legislative kind of, I can't say update, but a predate as we go into the session from Ms. Beckman and Ms. Baynard.
Sure. Just very briefly, the GPC met and we had a really good discussion about the current state of the draft update for our 2021 priorities. We're going to go back and retake a look at some language that we had considered the regular session this year that would have provided some actual protections for our dedicated revenue that we could put in the code. So I'm going to continue to work with Ms. Backman and probably come to our General Assembly members to ask your advice on how to proceed for this session. And then on the issue of number 3, the additional flexibility for virtual meetings, again, this will be the codification of language that we've supported that's currently in the budget that allows public bodies, including us, to have meetings virtually during a health and safety concern. Mayor Wilson brought up a specific wrinkle on that we'll need to pay attention to, is that the language that we have right now requires all of these virtual meetings to have a public comment period, as opposed to what many of you are doing, which is you have a dedicated public comment period, not at every meeting, but at most of your meetings. So we'll see if we can address that. Again, the FOIA Council is taking a look at some draft legislation. It will go easier if they endorse what moving forward. And then Ms. Crystal brought up that certainly if not for this session, but something overall for all of us and public bodies to think about is working through a process that understands what we've just experienced during the pandemic, using these virtual platforms and how they can be used, being transparent, having open meetings, and maybe be used more than they currently can be in the code. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll stop.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or for Ms. Baynard, Ms. Monica, Ms. Beckman, anything you want to add or before we? No?
Thank you, Chair Randall. I do not. We will continue to work on this, and we anticipate seeking authority adoption on the draft 2021 legislative program at your December meeting. Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
I was at PPC, I guess it was last week, where we were sort of asked to dream a little bit about, what we thought the top priorities might be moving forward in VTrans. And I was struck by the fact that everybody talked about the need to support buses. And one of the issues in our enabling legislation is that we have to use our money to expand capacity, and it's been viewed very much as capital dollars, not operating dollars. I can't remember whether it's totally precluded, but it does seem to me that given that we don't really know kind of when this is all coming back, and that everybody's local budgets are pretty tight, and that we have a lot of money sitting in investments that's making money right now that we haven't necessarily programmed all of it. I just wonder whether we might like to ask for some flexibility for a couple of years to support some transit operations. Not as a long-term strategy, I'm really not proposing that. But I am concerned that we're going to be up against the wall with local bus, and local bus is coming back. The localities are, I was talking, I think Keith Jasper or David Roden said, we're at 80 or 85% of the ridership on local bus. So anyway, that's just it's a thought and idea. We would have to get permission, I think, and so it seems appropriate to raise it in the context of the legislative package.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. I think we can. I think it's it's one of those things we can have a discussion. But I would say that once you start going down a path of offering money, it's hard to take that back. It's really hard to pull that back. And so if we start even discussing having MBTA money being used for operations, people get real used to money real quick. And my fear is that we would be seen a little bit as a piggy bank for transportation, which is not the goal of MBTC. I mean, I'm sorry, MBTA or MBTC or MBTC. So I would resist that. I think that I can completely concur with what it sounds like what the PPC was saying is that buses are so important. But I would see it as ways of what capital money can we use to increase bus routes or bus purchases or whatever we might do. But I would be very hesitant to start talking about doing using money for operations. What else? I think now we should remember. I think we should remember that if any locality has their 30%, any locality's 30% of MBTA money can be used for operations. And so in some ways you can do that if you choose. Anyway, any locality can do that. But once we start giving money out, I think taking it back, it's really, really hard to do because people get really used to it fast. So anybody else as we go into thoughts? Now we have some time to talk about don't we, Tracy? Have a little bit of time to talk about the upcoming session. So this is kind of the first big whack at it. We have a little bit more time, right?
Yeah, we have another meeting next month.
Yeah, we have a meeting in January. Yeah,
for DPC and then the full committee. If we don't make any major changes, the full committee can always adopt at our early January meeting. Session convenes January 13th.
January 13th. Okay. All right. Anybody else on this?
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir, Mr. I can. Well, let me go to Mr. McKay first, and then I think I heard Ms. Watts after that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question or comment really is on the federal legislative program, which of course is on a little bit different timeline. And I note in the draft that we really don't mention anything about federal COVID-19 relief for transit agencies in general. And I know I don't want to get in the travel lane of operations, as the chair just mentioned, but it would seem to me, since NVTC has adopted language, I think many of our localities are, and this group has talked about the big challenges that Metro has ahead. Given the fact that we'll have, before too long, a new administration, some new members of the Hill, it would just seem to me like a good opportunity in the federal part to support COVID-19 relief for transit operations, transit agencies in our area, most particularly WMATA. And, it's just one more opportunity for a regional body to weigh in on the importance of Metro to the region and the importance of federal support for Metro, which, as we've talked about, is absolutely vital to the sustainability of Metro. And we can't, NVTA can't, the jurisdictions can't make up the lost revenue challenges that are being faced with Metro. So I would suggest that before we come back with the final document, that maybe we look at the language that NVTC already has in their package and see if we can come up with something as similar to that as possible so that our message is very clear in our federal legislative package.
Mr. McKay, it's my job to say what you just said. I say it every meeting. I missed it this meeting. You picked it right up. So that's a good teaming with me, Jeff. I really appreciate that. Everything you said, I concur, spot on. So thank you for saying it. Ms. Watts.
Yes, I just have a procedural question. I had some edit or additional information that I wanted to add to one aspect. To whom do I submit that? Is it to Ms. Baynard or to whom do I submit it?
Delia Watts, if you could send it to myself and Ms. Bachman, that would be great.
All right, great. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Jennifer here.
Hi, yes, Miss Boysko, how are you doing?
I'm well. I just wanted to add that I would be happy to work with Ms. Baynard as well on legislative package to make sure that we're hitting our timelines and getting our priorities right. And appreciate. You can't hear. Can you hear? Can you hear me, Chair?
I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Well, you could perhaps relay the conversation. I was just saying that as the Senate member here, I'm happy to work with you all to make sure that we get this going before the deadline.
I got to tell you, we have the A team this year of state reps. I mean, to go from literally a person who worked really hard to get money taken out of MBTA to the three of you, Jennifer and Vivian, Danica, it is night and day, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it. Really, it's amazing. So, you couldn't hear her? I would tell you. I'll tell her, Jennifer. She's sitting right there, so I'll tell her. All right. Anybody else? All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. We have the annual report to the Joint Commission on Transportation Accountability. Ms. Backman is rushing to put her earphones in. Ready when you are.
Thank you, Chair Randall. I will be quick, as we are required each year to provide an annual report to the Joint Commission on Transportation Accountability regarding the usage of funding generated pursuant to the provisions of HB 2313. The annual report is in your document. It is due by November 15th of each year, and we do submit this report on time. I just, to be brief, would like to draw your attention to a few of the elements in the report. Starting on page 2, you see a breakdown of the fiscal year 2020 revenues. So we have a pie chart showing in figure 1, the MBTA FY 2020 revenue breakdown. And in figure 2, we have the MBTA FY 2020 HB 2313 revenue allocation. Additionally, we have the projects that were adopted in your 6-year program that you adopted this past July in the FY 20 to 2025 6-year program. And we also note the projects as reported to us that the localities are funding with their 30% revenues. Now, I want to note about the 30% revenues, there is no sunset provision on this money. The localities can continue to bank it until they save enough to advance projects or what have you. But we do have this information in the packet in our attempt to give a holistic picture of the revenues in regards to how we're expending them. Lastly, if you look on page 11 for figure 3 and figure 4, we do have the FY 2021 through 2025 estimated revenue breakdown and estimated revenue allocation. We did put this in because this includes the funding that comes back to the authority per the I-81 bill and per the Omnibus Transportation Bill. So you will see sales tax, grantor's tax, truck registration and road use. And then, of course, we have the MBTD transfer, which is the monies that comes from the state. Madam Chair, that completes the report.
Ms. Backman, this report is so easy to read. It's so well done, and it's so well spelled out and it's very, very user friendly. So thank you so much. Any questions on the report from anybody? It is item number 12. It's the attachment of item number 12. So if you have time later on, anyone to take a look at it, it's incredibly well done. Any other questions with that? All right, seeing none, I will go on to Mr. Longi. Item number 13 is all the finance stuff, and you can just like go through them all. The investment portfolio, the monthly revenue report, and operating budget. It's on you, sir. Well, that was fast. That was fast. I'm assuming everybody read the documents. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Longi? Mr. Longi, you've done a great job maintaining our money, and that was evident by the audit and the fact that we continue to have a strong credit rating. So thank you, sir. And then for for our committee reports, does any of our committee chairs have anything they'd like to offer for the committee reports that they want to highlight that's not in the package? I will ask Mr. Wilson, Mr. Colbert, Mr. Boyce, does anyone have anything they'd like to add that's not in the package already?
No, I think for mine, the memo covers it quite well.
Okay, so does anyone have any questions on any of the committee reports? That's planning and programming, planning coordination, and technical advisory. And again, it's all in the package. Wonderful. Ms. Backman, do you have any comments for your executive director report?
Thank you, Chair Randall. The only thing I'd like to note that's in my executive director's report is that the RFP for the update to transaction has been posted. It is that time that we start the update of the region's long-range transportation plan. Your current transaction was adopted October of 2017. This is a plan that we update every 5 years. It takes us as staff about 2.5 years to get from beginning to end. So that RFP has been posted. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Snyder, question? Hi.
Mr. Snyder, yes.
Yes, thanks. So I understand that at the federal level, the air quality and environmental issues will be embedded in every aspect, including transportation. My question is, in our future planning, how are we embedding the environmental goals and climate change related issues? Because it's going to come at us in federal standards. So if for no other reason, can you, Monica, can you comment about how we're embedding that now into everything we do? Because we're going to be required to, I think.
Ms. Beckman?
Thank you for that, Councilmember Snyder. So we are in the process of working with the committees, the TAC, the PCAC, the Planning and Programming Committee, to not only look at the vision and goals that we have for transaction, but we need to have a discussion in regards to the performance measures. Your current transaction has 15. I think we all agree that that is too many, but we want to make sure that we have performance measures that, number one, that we can actually measure. And that's a key component, but making sure that we're in step and in line with what VTrans is doing, what's going on at the TPB, and as you noted, at the federal level. We have a balancing act of sorts because we're looking at not only congestion reduction, we're looking at safety, we're looking at environmental, and not to jump ahead too soon, but we're also trying to look at equity in this long-range transportation plan. I can't tell you how that's being defined yet, but what I can say is that we are trying to take a holistic approach at looking at environmental and other issues as we start to identify some of the performance measures and goals in the vision statement.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Snyder, for that question. Thank you, Ms. Blackman. Chair's comments, I have just two things. As we get ready to close out this calendar year and come up on a new calendar year, it will be time to select officers, especially vice chair. And so I have to appoint a nominating committee, which I'm going to do that right now. I'd like Ms. Wheeler and Mr. Wood, so Mayor Woods and Ms. Wheeler to serve on the nomination committee. We can talk later about what that will look like or how that looks, but if you two, and I spoke to them earlier, do not mind serving on the nominations committee, I would really appreciate that. What I have to do is to do appoint a nominations committee right now. At the December meeting, they make the nominations, and then at the January meeting, the nominations are voted on. And so we're doing that. That's the order it has to be done. So that's why I have appointed the nominations committee tonight. Secondly, I will say that Mr. Parrish has one more MBTA meeting, and it will be in December. Mr. Parrish is the only person, I think, on MBTA who was here when the original House Bill 2313 was passed. And so using a term from Narnia, he was here when the dark magic was written. For all of you Narnia fans. At the next meeting, we will honor / roast Mr. Parrish at the December meeting. He came in today so happy. He's like he's somebody who has senioritis. He just wants out of here. And so we're going to do that at the next meeting. Is that okay with you, Mr. Parrish?
Chair Randall, I can only imagine what a roast of a Republican by umpteen Democrats might look like. By the way, that's supposed to be funny. I didn't hear any laughter.
It is funny. Yeah, he's the only Republican. He's the only. And I said to him earlier, you don't run as you know in a city race. You don't run with a party identification, but you are endorsed by your party. So, so we'll have some fun with Mr. Parrish at the December meeting. That is all I have for chair's comments. We do have a closed session tonight. It could be just a while. So how about we do this? How about we take a 10-minute break, and then when I come back, we'll read us in the closed session, and then Deb, you do all your magic to put us in closed session. But let's take about 10 minutes before we go to closed session. Okay, so I have everybody back here in 10 minutes exactly. Thank you.